Hi, I'm Aaron, and welcome to the Slim, Fitty, and Biggie Committee podcast, where me and my best friends, Danny and Matt, take a deep dive into hip hop, the genre that has formed an integral part of our lives. Coming up on today's show, I caught up with DJ Chubby Chub, a veteran of hip hop who has had a career spanning over 25 years. He has worked with artists such as Jay-Z, Nas, and has even been 50 Cent's tour DJ for 7 years. It was fascinating talking to him, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Alright, let's get into it. Alrighty, welcome to the show, DJ Chubby Chub, one of the longest repping DJs in the game of hip hop. You've been doing it for over 25 years.
Correct.
For me, it's always really exciting to speak to someone who's been in hip hop for such a long time, because in terms of your career, you've been doing it for longer than I've almost been alive. So for you, how have you kind of kept that drive? Because it's a really long career that you've had. There's trials, there's tribulations. What's kind of been your motivator? What's been keeping you going?
I mean, I think the most that's been having me going in the game is really just the music. The music and having the energy to say, you know, I can keep doing this. I enjoy it. I love it.
And so how did you first get into hip hop? Because you like, when we're starting, hip hop was more underground, like in the 90s, you know, in the late 80s. How did you get into it?
Well, hip hop for me started in the 80s. Growing up young in the Bronx in New York. My cousins used to play these tapes, live tapes of different artists like Cold Crush, Treacherous 3, Funky 4, and these artists were like outside in the park performing. And they would have these tapes. I was so young, I didn't really know. And it was just that music that turned me into understanding, like, I want to play, I want to hear this music. So I was listening to the music, but then when I was outside and saw the actual DJ at a young age, I was like, I told my mother I wanted to do that. I wanted to DJ.
And how did she take that?
You know, it was kind of hard because we didn't have money at the time. So, you know, buying equipment is always a problem when you want to start getting into something. It's like, you know, trying to say you want to play a piano. You can't buy a piano if you don't have the money.
Yeah.
You know, but it was just, you know, very instrumental that was the idea. That was the plan. Like, I wanted to do that, but I did not realize that I was going to be able to say it was my career.
And so, because you went down the DJ route, obviously you've got the DJ versus the MC. So for you, what made you go, you know what, I want to mix master, I want to make the beats, as opposed to I want to be the MC who's like, you know, moving the crowd, you know, lyricism. What made you go down that route instead?
Well, rapping wasn't for me. Like, I could joke around about being rapping. Like, you know, rapping, we used to joke around, but it was always the energy of the people, like watching people like at house parties dancing, and the DJ made people dance. So I wanted to do that. That was more thrilling for more for me than me being the actual DJ.
And so, is there anyone that you took particular reference to? Is there anyone that you were like, you know what, this is who I see, this is who I want to be like, this is the style that I want to do?
Well, you know, it comes in different eras. So it was many DJs. I mean, you know, Charlie Chase was from Cold Crush, you know, Latin DJ, which I'm Latin, 100% Puerto Rican. He was one of the people that I seen. Then, you know, Grandmaster Flash was everyone's idol. Then you move on to getting more to the, how can I say, more of the controlling and speaking. So it became DJs like the world famous Brucey B, Lovebug Starsky, Star Child, DJ Hollywood. These DJs showed you how to talk to the crowd, how to be able to acknowledge the people in front of you, interact with them. Then it became, Kid Capri, Clark Kent, which was my mentor, and there you have it. Those were like the big broads of DJ, not, and also, my godbrother Diz, and my good friends, Red Handed and Technician, the DJ that would be like my peers. And after that, it was Doo-Wop, Ron G, SNS, Craig G, the mixtape era.
Because I did read you've released like 39 mixtapes, so it's not like you've been quiet at all. So you've been hustling hard. So that's more than one mixtape a year that you've been releasing through your whole career.
And it's crazy because I got 120 masters. Still to this day, I have every master I've done as a tape.
And so how did you, because you love hip hop, right? But there is always a point where you get tired. There's always a point where you're like, you know what? I've just gone on tour and it hasn't worked out. How have you kept coming back? What's that motivating drive?
I mean, for me, it's always being able to say that I can study different music. Like, I've always had an open mind for music, being from a Latin descent and being able to have an open ear, because it's just not hip hop. It's so worldwide with everything. Like, I remember at a time when before I went to London, they used to call jungle music. You know what I mean? And then you went to a certain area and you heard tribal music. Then you heard different songs that was always captivating, that wasn't always as hip hop. There's music that's all over the world that'll keep you in tune to realizing what you really want to do with it. Like, do you want to just play hip hop and be known as a hip hop DJ, which it has happened, but you're able to play everything. You're able to be diverse with what you're doing as a DJ. You don't want to be just stuck in one genre.
Yeah, and did you find that when you were beginning, was there a particular sound that you were like, okay, this is what I want to start with. This is what I want to explore?
I mean, when we first started, it was just break beats. It really wasn't even too much hip hop music in the 80s. It was like break beats. Everybody wanted a Bob James. Everybody wanted a Captain Sky. Everybody wanted a Billy Squier, Aerosmith, these records, Led Zeppelin. You wanted these records, but just for the beginning part of the record, not realizing there was a whole song. You just was catching the break, and that was it. You know what I mean? Before you started hearing Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, once again, Funky 4 plus one more, Treacherous 3, Crash Crew. Then when you started hearing that, that's when you was like, oh, wow, these are the songs now. Before you even got to, Kool G Rap and Big Daddy Kane and Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, there's a lot more before getting to where we were to this present time.
And so, because hip hop history is one of the most interesting parts of hip hop, because it's so rich in culture, it's so rich in personalities. We look now at 2020 and just the evolution of hip hop has really elevated quickly from people you've worked with, looking at people like 50 Cent who changed the game, looking at all these different artists, Jay-Z who changed the game. So how do you see that change come across and shift into, mainstream culture?
Well, it becomes an age thing because, after a while, it's really like what was in the 90s when you had Tribe Called Quest and you had leaders of the new school. You had Main Source, you had Lord Finesse, you had Digging in the Crates. Then you moved on. Then you went into the Onyxes and the Flatliners, the Grave Diggers. Then you move into Wu-Tang. It's just, for me, it's just more like a true blessing because I've seen different eras of music and been able to grasp to everything to the present time. You know what I mean? Like being able to say now you can play the baby, little baby, Drake. But back then I was playing, Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, uh, different music that is so elevated that it makes you be like, wow. You know what I mean? Like you got the 90s, you got your 2000s, and now you got your current.
And so do you have a personal favorite? Do you have one that in your back of your mind, this era to me is one that I love?
Well, I love all eras. If I have to say an era, I would have to say the beginning because it was like listening to like it's like watching a chalkboard, like a teacher writing on the chalkboard, and you saw the start of her writing the first sentence, or even writing her name on the board, like I'm Miss So and So. You know what I mean? Because I seen the beginning.
Yeah, it's like the
And
start
still
of the lesson.
yeah, and being here still now and still breaking records and still on radio, traveling, and DJing for one of the biggest artists to this present day due to the pandemic and everything. 50 Cent, which is a hell of a mogul, someone that had a driving force with his music. It's a blessing.
And so before we talk about where you're at the moment and talk about, 50 Cent and collaborating, just want to talk about your growing up. So you grew up in the Bronx, you've got, Latin heritage. How was your growing up? Were you exposed to a lot of music? How was that kind of influence throughout your childhood?
I mean, my mother played so much Latin music that, when I was young, I really didn't care for it. As I got older, I loved Spanish music more, salsa. I mean, but it wasn't really that. It was more like I said, my cousins was playing tapes, and the music that I heard made me, it kind of like made me be like, wow, what is this? Like this, being able to hear it on a loud radio, like a boombox, and this energy that's coming through the speakers makes you be like want to learn word for word of what they're saying. The influences of music is just so many different things for me. It's just like food. You know what I mean? Before you had McDonald's, there was Jack in a Box.
Yeah. I will say the thing about hip hop is it's addictive as hell. Once you start
Nah,
and you start finding music that you like, it's like a wormhole. You start finding producers, you start finding DJs, you start finding rappers that you like, and then it's just you get deeper and deeper. So
yeah.
you're 100% right when it comes to that. How did you balance, starting out, you said you didn't have much money, and then also purchasing equipment and, putting in the time to obviously build up a rep, do the hours. How was that balance? What age were you doing that?
Um, I definitely want to say 14. I would go to a lot of neighbors' houses and get music. Like they would have record players and records, and I would say, Mr. Epps, are you gonna use these songs? Are you gonna use these records? And some would say, sure, you could take them, or some would say you could borrow them and bring them back. But I was bad. I wouldn't bring things back. I would take a lot of records from people and not bring them back.
Yeah.
I kind of did that to my own friends too, and I'm sorry for it. But it made me better though. They
Do they?
contributed to the Chubby Chub.
Yeah. Did they let you live it down, or did they forget about it? It's one of those ones your
Nah,
friends forget.
I got friends that still talk about it to this day. I just had some friends talk about it the other day, to be honest.
They're coming to collect.
Yeah, they want their records back. They do, but they're not gonna get them.
So collecting records is like a thing in hip hop because you've got to search for samples, you've got to search for break beats, you've got to search for just this unique sound. how's that process? Because you just got to go through record after record after record after record.
Well, you know what I mean? You definitely got to go through record after record, but you got to hear it somewhere so you know what you're looking for. At this time, you know, at the time, let's say the 80s, when records were, you know, if you had one copy of a record, you'd be mad because you can't cut it. You couldn't, you know, have the record and come back to the record if you only had one record. So you got to wait till you find another copy, or you found a way to get money to go get another record, then make copies of everything, because you had to have doubles of a lot of records back then. You know, one-offs here and there, but the process was a challenging process. But, you know, then I got a job, started working, and that, so on and so forth. And I started selling tapes. Before selling mixtapes out, I was selling tapes in my own area to like my peers. So my peers they would always be like, "You got a tape? You got a tape? Yo, you got a tape?" And that's how it would go. And I would, you know, sell my tapes to everybody.
And so who did you go to for feedback? Who was like, you know, guiding you in the direction of your career?
I didn't really have too much feedback, but I did have a lot of criticism. And that was just because of where I lived. So the people that I lived, like lived in my projects, they would always they would clown. Like, you know, they would roast you, and they would, oh, that was whack. Or, you know, they would just joke with you. So that would make you work harder at everything. So it wasn't really like I had anybody to give me a strong way to do certain things until I met like Red Handed and Technician. They were like my hardest critics. And then Clark Kent would say, "You got to do this and you got to work on that." And that's how I started transitioning to better different movements of records and things.
And so it's interesting because when there's like two paths you can go down. When you get criticism, you can give up or you can keep digging in. And obviously, I'm sure you've seen people who say they want to be a DJ, say they want to be a rapper, they get criticism and they give up.
Right.
What do you think for you kept you going? You know what, despite, you know, as much as people are schooling, as much as the criticism you may get, that I still want to go back and keep working on my craft. I'm not going to give up at this.
You know, like I said, I never thought it would have been a career. That's one thing. Let me be clear. I never would have thought that this would have been my career. But I'm gonna tell you a movie and how it changed my whole persona of wanting to be a DJ. The movie Juice. When Queen Latifah is doing the audition with Q, better known as Omar Epps, and she's listening to his tape, and she goes, "You do a lot of parties around the area? You do parties?" He goes, "Yeah, you know, I do parties around the area here and there." And she goes, "You're local. Oh, you're local." So after watching that movie, I go back to my projects where I lived on this 34 University, and everybody was clowning. "Oh, you're local. Oh, you're local." So that made me work even more harder to find my next movement of what I wanted to do. And soon be it, I met DJ Doo-Wop. And Doo-Wop took my tapes downtown to 125th Street to a popular store called Stereo Palace at the time, before it became Stereo Plaza. But Stereo Palace used to be the place where all DJs' mixtapes were being sold. And he took my tapes down there, and that was it. From there, it brought me into a different realm.
You weren't local anymore. You started getting bigger.
Yeah, it just started happening. Like little by little, I was traveling and touring and by myself, just doing parties everywhere.
So the world of a DJ, or the world of someone who makes music, is kind of different from like a hip hop art, like an MC in a way, because you rely on your craft of finding the beats. You rely on your craft on mixing and mastering, whereas a rapper relies on their craft of the spoken word. So did you find there were differences in the way you would tour versus the way a rapper would tour?
Well, definitely, because when I did it, it was more like through mixtapes. So it wasn't like my songs per se. It was me playing songs that were by other artists. It's just how you would mix and match those songs, or you would speak about the songs that made people cause an awareness to them, and how your voice sounded. Because remember, it's like radio. No one sees the person that's speaking until they see them. You got the greatest voice and be the ugliest person. You know what I mean? So that'd be the whole theory. Like, no one really hears or see you until only they hear you, but they don't see you. And then when they see you, like, oh wow, that's you. You know what I mean? So it's like it goes hand in hand.
And your name, DJ Chubby Chub, how did you come up with that name? Because to be honest, every time I hear the name, it puts a smile to my face. Literally every single time. So how did you come up, or how did that get coined?
Well, like I said, Latin descent. So a lot of people used to call me Gordito. That was chubby in Spanish. But I didn't, at the time I was going through a name phase, and I kept trying to figure out what name to really come up with. And it was kind of hard because I tried like Willie D, because my real name is Willie. And I was like, it's not going to work. I tried Fatty D, but it was another Fatty D. He had it. And then I was just like, I'm going to just go with Chubby Chub. And one day I was courageous enough. I went and got a sweatshirt made and in graffiti, and I wore it at night one night, and everybody clowned me. Everybody was like, Chubby Chub, what? In your face and in your butt. And they would say funny things like that. And I was like, whatever. But it's a process. I mean, I just thought it was a dope name, and lo and behold, it still works.
It's definitely memorable. It's definitely one that you don't forget. But I mean, hip hop is one of these ones where, for whatever reason, all the names have something to do with size. Big L, Big Pun, Biggie. You got Lil Kim, Lil Wayne. It's all big, Lil. It's just one of those things in the culture where we just got to describe how you look.
Yeah, like on the first time I met Chubb Rock, and he tried to tell me that I should change my name because he was Chubb Rock. That was the funniest thing.
And so, coming up, you're starting to release music, you're starting to do tours, you're touring on your own. What's the next step after that?
I mean, right now I have you mean as of now, you mean?
I meant as in back in the day. So you're starting to do tours
back in
by
the day.
yourself.
Oh, yeah.
What was your plan after that? What did you do to
I
get
didn't have
further?
a plan. I didn't have a plan. I ended up moving from New York to Boston, and I was doing parties and different clubs, and a radio station opened up in 2000. And they approached me and told me that they wanted me to do radio. I've never done radio. I never had an understanding of radio. I'm a street DJ. I don't know anything. I don't know how the radio worked at the time. And there's like, we want you to be on, and we want you to be on at noon. So imagine, I'm a street DJ. I don't know no other way how to. I'm thinking, when I hear radio, I'm thinking how radio was in New York and how DJs were. That wasn't the case. But radio was my next move, and it was like it fell on my lap, and it became more like the DJ personality on your own, and being able to assess the way how I would bring records and sell tickets and get tickets going, and it was just a big factor. It was radio.
And so radio, because you got to sell in radio. Radio is one of those forums where you're always selling. You're always kind of talking. What did you need to do to adapt to the new mentality?
was more just understanding the liners. It was more like, the back selling of everything that I had to go on. Like you said, it was a selling. And also remembering that I had to play commercials, because commercials have to play. If not, the station don't make money. Like I can remember the first time when I did a Saturday night show, when they gave me my first Saturday night show. I didn't have a jock. It was no personality when they just said, "Yeah, you're good. You ready? Go by yourself." And the jock left. But he didn't tell me that I had to pull commercials out. So I was playing for 4 hours straight, no commercials. Monday morning I come in, "Oh, you did a great job on radio." The program director goes, "You did a great job. What about commercials?" I said, "Nobody told me about commercials." So he had to call the jock, and the jock had to explain to me what I had to do, and that was history. That's 20 years. As of right now, it's 20 years on radio now.
And so how do you feel about commercials like breaking up your set? Because you have a certain flow, you design a particular way. Did you figure out a way to, all right, this is where I'll break it up, this is where the commercial goes, and then I continue my set?
Yeah, I always knew that a certain amount of records were played. Like I physically played these songs. Like at the time it was vinyl, and I knew exactly that in the 30 minutes I had to stop. There was no, unless I had a commercial free hour, which that would be like the 5 o'clock that I had the commercial free. But otherwise than that, it was 30 minutes. You had to stop set. Those commercials had to play.
And I've always wondered this: when the commercials play, do you take your headphones off, or do you have to listen to the commercials run so that you can pick up straight away?
Well, I used to listen to a lot of commercials just to make sure that they would play, because I didn't ever want to miss a commercial. Like if it was on a log, I wanted to make sure that those commercials ran currently and the way they were supposed to run. I never wanted to miss a commercial.
Not after the first one.
Yeah, not after the first time anyway.
And so going back, because I also read you were part of the group Original Flavor as well. So
Yeah.
you weren't part of the first album they released, but you were part of the second one. How
Second
did
album.
that come through? How did you get in touch with Ski? What was that relationship like?
Well, that was once again Clark Kent. That was Clark Kent, and also a good friend of mine named Tone, which he was in the second group, part of the group, Tone Hooker, T Strong. Um, T Strong used to come to all the local parties I used to do in the area. And he came to me and said, "Yo, want to be in a group with us?" And I was like, "I guess." And then Clark was like, "Yeah, you got to do that. That's what you got to do. You got to do that." So that was history. We did the second album and we toured. And, in the same time, I met Jay-Z. I mean, I met Jay a little bit before that because he used to be at Clark House. So Clark, that was like kind of like Clark's artist at the time. And I used to get all Jay-Z's music before everybody else did. And this is when Jay was just recording music and certain things he wouldn't record, and I would just take it and I would put it on my mixtapes. So I was the first person to put Jay-Z on mixtapes.
Damn, that's very, very cool. Like I don't know. It's strange because at the time you don't know what Jay-Z becomes, but looking back now,
I mean, honestly, it's crazy because even when we used to go do shows and stuff, he used to be like, "I don't really want to do this." Like after a while, he didn't really want to do it. And then I was like, "Nah, you got to keep going. Like you're gonna be you're gonna be the ish. Like there's no way for you to quit right now." And then you look now and it's like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, like the plaque I got on my ceiling right now, like, on the wall, like that's like all the albums right there. That's like at that time, that was 16 million sold.
and for those of our viewers who obviously podcast. DJ Chubby Chub has a Rockefeller record plaque up top, so I'm just looking at that. So it's really cool. What I love seeing is people in hip hop who collect hip hop memorabilia. Like, you can just tell that it's not a show, that they love it. And I can tell, obviously, you don't have a 30-year, career if you don't love it. It's just one of these exciting things. But because you released that first album, Jay-Z appears on one of the tapes, on one of the records. And to be honest, his flow is very different to what it is right now. He was way faster. He's spitting this flow. Whereas now he has his signature style. It's very stop-starty. So when you were listening, could you feel him working? What was the process? What was he trying to do? And how did you kind of manage the beat there?
I mean, Jay just had his own unique style. Like, a lot of people would say that he would rap fast and not have, like some people wasn't really into it at the time. But when you listen to him, he was dope. Like, he was a dope rapper. Like, he wasn't like the speed person and you couldn't understand him. He would speed, but you would understand every word he said. It's not like the first time when I heard Twister, I didn't understand none of the words Twister said.
It takes a long time for you to get used to Twister.
So, and then you figure you had Jay-Z and you had Jaz-O that was doing the speed tongue twister rap. Then comes along La Smooth Chip Fu and things like that, and you start listening to that. But Jay has his words play is like crazy. So it makes you be like, nah, he's dope. But then he found a different niche. He found a way to just, like if you know Jay-Z, like if you ever meet Jay-Z and you ever sit with him or you watch him, you see how cool he is. Like, he's too laid back. So he learned how to adapt that into his own vocals and just be without all the extra word. He just was able to rap and people could understand what he said.
And so seeing that process of knowing who he is and seeing him actually embody who he was, because I feel like the difference between the records that he was doing when he was young versus moving into albums like The Reasonable Doubt, he embodied who he was more. He accepted who he was and he put it out in an album. And then obviously into his career, how do you see that as development for him?
I think it was dope. I think, we all find a niche to get ourselves into a path that we want to be in, and for people to see what he really brings to the table.
Awesome. And so for anyone who wants to check that track out, that's Can I Get Open? That's featuring Jay-Z. So I know I personally I literally, in my car this morning, I was listening to that track. It is a dope track. The beat is really nice. It works in terms of it allows the rappers to do their job. How do you find that balance? Because part of, being a DJ is allowing the artist to actually feature. There are so many albums where there are beats that overtake the artist and where the beats don't do enough. How do you find that balance of working with the artist, using their voice, but also having the instrumental behind them to work?
When we did this album, when we did our Original Flavor album, we stood long hours in the studio trying to figure out different ways if we're going to accept this beat or that beat. It was really Ski. Like, Ski had this ear, and I would say, and he'll be like, what do you think? I was like, that's all right. And then he'd be like, all right, we'll change it. We'll stop. Like, the problem with Ski, though, if he even had 4 bars of a beat, he would shut off the computer, like shut off the SB12, and we lose everything. We had to start from scratch. And that used to piss me off.
Yeah, I bet.
Because Ski had, like, See, at the time, the SP12 never saved anything unless you formatted it on a disk. For a lot of people that don't understand formatting, like it's like almost formatting the hard drive, but you formatted a floppy disk that you would put into the machine, and the machine would save everything into that little floppy disk. But Ski, as soon as he felt like, it's whack, he'll just shut it off. So we're like, yo, you could have saved that. Nah, do something better. That's how he was.
Yeah.
But it's just like we all had like a collective idea of how we wanted everything to sound. Like we just wanted that, if you listen to the album now, you still hear like we were ahead of our time for that album. We definitely had a lot of beats that's on there that stick on there that's really kind of tough. Like even if you gave it to somebody right now and they did something with it, some of them records would surpass the time.
And because you did, like you guys did some good stuff. Why'd you guys stop after that album? Because you guys broke up, you went your separate ways. So what happened there?
I mean, I just think we were just probably like tired of trying to be like in a group. Like Ski was, doing his own beats. Ski started working more on production. I started working more on, concentrating on me, DJing, and T Strong was writing for a lot of people. We still in talks. Like we talk every day. I just spoke to Ski today at 8:00 tonight. He got a producers challenge he's doing. So, Ski's still there. It's my brother T Strong. They're my brothers for life. Dame Dash used to manage us. I just spoke to him not too long ago. And it's just probably I want to say it's just time. Everybody just found a different way to do different things.
Yeah, I think it's always hard with groups because at the end of the day, everyone also has their own career. You look at Wu-Tang as the perfect example of, the artists came together, they created a group, and then they go off and do solo music as well. So it's just one of those ones. At some point, you kind of want to do your own thing.
Yeah, you mean sometimes other things transpire. It makes you move on to other things.
And so bouncing back, so you obviously go into radio, you do radio for a long period of time. How do you start getting in touch with, artists? How do you build those connections?
I mean, a lot of artists, you generally meet them during, in between the radio. I mean, like interviews or in passing. And, I was always connected. A lot of artists, I basically grew up with. A lot of the major artists, I grew up with most of them. Most of them I grew up with, and most of them follow my mixtapes and things like that. So, but then when it became to like the artistry of being a DJ for artists, like, I DJ for Nas, I DJ for Foxy Brown, I DJ for Fat Joe, which is my brother, more than music. I've DJ for Khalees. Was
Who
on
was the
tour
first
with.
person you DJ for?
Oh, I used to be in a group called Elements of Style when I was signed to Wild Pitch Records. That was the first group that I was signed to, and I was a guy named Main One, and I DJ'd for him when I was like 90. It was like 90. Had to be, yeah, like 90.
And so what you
And
learn from that kind of gave you the skills to be able to DJ for, really big artists. Nas is considered one of the greatest of all time. You look at, the people you've worked with. Fat Joe, he's been in the game for so long. Also, one of the greatest of all time with his ability to find artists and his ability to spot music. So, how did you get to a point where you were at a level where those artists were like, okay, I think the right move is to have DJ Chubby Chub DJ
I mean,
for me?
I don't. I really couldn't tell you. I mean, I just took a chance at everybody that I worked with. You know, the only one that was like a big challenge is 50. Because as soon as you mess up on stage, he's gonna let you know. So like a little mistake could cost you a whole show of
Well,
embarrassment.
well, I remember I was there in Melbourne. You were on stage. I think a song ran. I couldn't even notice it. It was like a touch, like just a tiny bit over.
Yeah.
And he was not a happy man. He was not a happy man. He is a perfectionist.
Nah, he's definitely, you know, he's definitely one of those don't let nothing slide. Like, and if he's in the moment and he misses it, that's where he's like, you see Kanan. You know what I mean? Right on stage, you see Kanan. And like, you know, we're human. We can't always predict something that could happen. It's not my fault all the time. Sometimes it's just, you know, like the equipment, something with the equipment, or it just happens. And, you know, that's why sometimes you got to pay attention to what you do, because if not, it could cost you. But I got 7 years, so I'm cool.
So how is, because I mean, so many people follow 50 Cent on Instagram. You see, he likes to school around. He likes to, make jokes. He likes to fire people up a little bit. How's working with him as someone who's, he's very up and about, but he's also extremely motivated?
I mean, you know, 50 is a great guy. I'm thankful to be working with him. I'm thankful to be a part of, you know, being around him and things like that. But it's never like, it just makes you want to work more. You know what I mean? My hashtag is always going to be never not working. I'm always going to be working no matter what, you know, because as Chubby Chub, I still got to keep going every day. So like working with him, seeing him work makes you want to do, you can't stop. There's no time for lollygagging or second guessing what you want to do. You just got to do it.
And so, have you seen 50? Because you've been working with him for 7 years. That's a long time, especially, you know, 50 is notoriously not the easiest guy to get along with. He knows exactly what he wants. He knows how to get after it. How have you seen his development? Obviously, he's moved into making shows like Power. He's going on tour still, but he's moved into more of a businessman rather than just an MC or just a rapper.
Oh, he's always been in the business. You know, he's always been business. I just think he just know how to utilize what he has going on now. You know what I mean? Like he just going into different levels. You know, he just his thought process is never stopping. You know, to be honest, the man barely sleeps.
To be honest, I thought the way he works and the things that he does, it looks like he barely sleeps.
No, I could guarantee you. I'm telling you, he don't sleep. He don't sleep. If he sleep, it's a minimum. You know, he's in the gym. He's running around. He's moving back in the gym, then getting ready to do shows. Like it's crazy.
And so, how do you, someone who's always on, he's ready to go, he's always, next thing, he's always working. How do you adapt to someone who's at that energy level that's beyond what we would even say is abnormal? It's like freak levels of energy. Like people like that, you come across, maybe once in a lifetime. I mean, you've rubbed shoulders with lots of successful artists, but it sounds like his work ethic is beyond even your goats.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I try to. I mean, I'm gonna be me. I can't be him. You know, only thing I do try to do is make sure that I'm leaner in my own health and everything, because he loved calling me fat boy. So that's really my thing right now.
So, what are you doing
But
to get fit? Does he ever offer to train with you, or is he just trying to just?
he's helped me a few times, but I definitely do get fit on my own. I definitely go to the gym, and eating a lot better and, just staying focused. It's not easy, but it's definitely a hell of a ride.
Well, the hard part is the eating. Going to the
Yeah,
gym is easy. The food is the hard part.
yeah. Food is definitely the hardest part, and really just trying to stay away from junk.
Yeah. Do you think that obviously growing up with less money in terms of the food that you can afford, because organic vegetables are expensive as opposed to you go to McDonald's, you can get a $6 meal for.
I mean, money wise is definitely, but you gotta. It's like anything. You gotta invest in yourself. You gotta make money. You gotta spend money to make money. So you gotta invest in yourself. If you don't invest in yourself, you're in the wrong business for anything. So if you really want to live, you gotta invest in yourself. Soda and juices ain't it. Water works better than anything.
100% agree. It's never too late to start. That's the
Never.
awesome thing. And if 50 Cent would call you fat boy, if that's what it takes, if DJ Chubby Chub could turn around and say that's what 50 Cent calls him, and if you look in the mirror, if 50 Cent would call you fat boy, it's time to drop the kegs. I know I have to drop.
It's a different type of love. That's what that is.
Hey, it's brutally honest. It's just telling you what he thinks. He wants you to be your best.
Yep.
And so if I move back to your mentor, you talk about your mentor quite a lot. How did you find a mentor and how did you get that sort of relationship?
Well, Clark Kent, I mean, one hell of a DJ, another business person, from producing to DJing to the king of sneakers. I just was honored to be able to work with Clark because Clark used to have different events and I would open up for him. And that was just a like a dream come true. And he paid me for it. He would pay me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and not no cheap money. Like he gave me money. Like like it was times he gave me $1,000, $1,500. It depends on the night. At one time DJs was making, top DJs was making 10, 15,000 a party.
Oh,
Yeah.
especially, in the 90s, that's a lot of coin.
Yeah, different. It was different. It was definitely different. Image was everything, from the way you dressed, the way your records would come in the club. He helped me with a lot of that. Like, some DJs were still carrying milk crates when I'm carrying record cases. Like, I, I'm looking way better just with my cases than the average person with the milk crates.
In terms of look, was he like, all right, first impressions are everything? They hear you, but then when you rock up for a show, you got to look the part.
Yeah. Image is everything when you step on stage, from hygiene to the clothes you wear to your mannerisms.
What do you need to do to develop that? Because obviously when you start, you don't think of those things. You just think, all right, if my music is good, then everything else will fall into place. But how did
Well,
you train yourself to be on stage?
I mean, I just know that I used to have a mirror when I was young, and I would do facial expressions, and I would try to practice how it would look on stage. But everybody used to say, "You're too serious. You gotta just have fun." And this is an early age, and I was like, "Nah, I want to look like this. Like, I want to be, like. But that wasn't really the case. The case was really like, you gotta smile. You gotta have fun with it. You gotta embrace what you're doing. And that's what happened. It became more of the understanding of back and forth with everything that I was doing.
And so did Clark Kent, was he the guiding light that was like, this is the skills that you need to develop. These are the parts where, this is okay, but what you need to do is X, Y, Z.
You know, I could say with Clark, it was more like transitions mattered. It's more the transition. More record from record, how you come across with those records, your selection, all that stuff he helped me with. But, being dominant at what I did was just what I always wanted to do. Like my hunger was different. My energy is always different. I'm in front of 100, 5,000, 70,000. I'm still going to be energetic. I'm still going to know how to get people involved.
And so in terms of picking certain tracks, how did you just have to trial and error and just go, let's see if this transitions into this track or this one transition into that? What about this break, that break? How did you kind of develop that part of the DJing art?
I mean, that's just my own instincts. Me knowing the difference between what record can really take people to one level or memory level. Knowing you want to see their hands up or you want to hear the oohs and ahs. Like I'm for the oohs and ahs. I'm for the hands up. I'm for the interaction. I'm for the, I need to see somebody I need to hear people make some noise. I need to feel the same way they feel. I need to feel like the way I feel. I need them to feel.
And that starts with having fun.
Yeah.
So for you, in terms of the type of music that you make, I've listened in a couple of interviews you've done that you make tracks for the ladies. So
right.
What's that guiding light? What's your kind of goal when it comes to making a set?
It's about ladies. Like, guys are going to come to the floor once they see the ladies on the floor. I mean, you could play for guys. You could play for your boys. That you could do that, but that's not generating what women want. Because you got to know how to please the women on stage. Like, when they're in a club, you want to get them in tune. Remember, women still buy records. Women still buy songs for 99 cents. They will go buy an artist song that they love, that one artist. So if you're playing music, you want to play music for them, not the average guy. I mean, I know for a fact, it could be R&B, it could be reggae, it could be a slow song, but it's whatever is going to make women want to dance.
Hey, and if the women come, so do the men. That's kind of a rule of life.
Exactly. That's what always works. And if a DJ plays backwards, he's in the wrong game.
Yeah, 100% agree. And so now with the development of female hip-hop artists, now obviously the culture is exploding to different people. How do you view the expansion in terms of female artists now becoming bigger? You got, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj leading the way, but you've got, artists like Daddy Lee, you've got artists like Shay Noir. They're coming through as well. How do you see that development?
It's a dope development. I mean, the female has always been in the game. I remember when Sha Rock and Pebbly Pooh, which in the 80s, they were the female rappers that were doing what they were doing. Then you had, after that, you had Wanda D and Debbie D. They was female rappers. I mean, it's dope that, because they try to say it's a man's world, but women have 150% of what it really is to make music and understand the gift that they have. You know what I mean? Whether it be sexually, mentally, nurturing, it's a woman's thing. It's a woman's world.
And so now what we see, because still, in the 80s, in the 90s, it was still male-dominated. Hip-hop is still male-dominated right now, but it's becoming more diverse. You see all these subcultures pop up. You've got hip-hop in the UK, you've got hip-hop in Australia, you've got all these different kind of cultures growing. You've got, even places like Italy, France, Russia.
Brazil.
They're also... So how have you seen that growth? Because, early days of hip hop, it was very local, and now it's gone worldwide.
I mean, it's always been worldwide. I've always seen London had their own trend of hip hop since the '90s. Toronto had their lane of hip hop, but everybody's hip hop was just boom bap. So it was the hip hop with the knock versus like London have grime and um Brazil has it's like trap but it's funk. It's just it circulates into different horizons because people find different ways to make the music sound different. You know what I mean? So like it's a beautiful thing because it's not just saying it was in the Bronx. I love the elevation of seeing hip hop in Japan, hip hop in Australia, hip hop in Midwest, hip hop in California. Everything is different. You know what I mean? It's never gonna stay the same.
And what do you think brought it to all these different countries? Because even in the beginnings, it was very underground, a lot of, especially, coming up in the 90s, you got gangster rap, you got groups like NWA bringing a new wave of aggressive gang culture. And then obviously the mainstream looked down upon it, didn't get a lot of positive feedback other than from people who grow up in that lifestyle, from people who understand what they're talking about, tracks like Fuck the Police. How do you see that develop into what, right now you're doing world tours, you're selling out absolutely everywhere. How did you see that development into all these different areas?
I mean, I just see, the people that decide to take a chance at what they believe in. You had Too Short in the Bay Area. You had E40 in the Bay Area. You have, it's really on the person that comes up with the music. Like when you first heard Souls of Mischief, you would have thought that was like the end all be all for music. You know what I mean? Like, or you heard De La Soul for the first time. It's just how you grasp it. You want to be able to own what you do. Like I think there's nothing but great positive music that in the world, you take bits and pieces like everything from anybody. Just like myself, like I take a little Jazzy Jeff, I take a little Kid Capri, I take a little bit of Clark Kent, I take a little bit of Brucey B, and I put it all together. I'm Chubby Chub.
Mm.
So you could take NWA, you take a little Tupac, and then you end up getting a little Baby now, or somebody that has that influence. You know what I mean? You're gonna get influenced by everything you see or hear, and everybody's gonna always say, "Oh, I grew up on Eazy, or I grew up on Biggie, or I grew up on Cameron, or I grew up on G Unit." You know what I'm saying? So it's really like it just moves into different things that escalate everybody's mental of understanding that music is not for one genre. It's not for one set of people. It's like everybody, everything.
And I literally could not have said it better myself. Music is definitely for everybody. And now you see, you talked about boom bap as being what everyone was doing, and now we're heading into trappy beats. The hi-hat is absolutely everywhere. How do you see the beats now versus the beats, in the 90s and the early 2000s? What do you think of the transition into more modern hip hop?
I think it's dope. I love the music. I love the hi-hats. I love the bass lines. But it's also boom bap is still there. You still have, Griselda. You still have Alchemist doing beats. You still got Action Bronson. You know, you still got boom bap, but you also have artists that are young artists that are doing hip hop that still sounds like 90s and 2000. And then you got those that are doing the new trappy bass, but they're using old loops into the music. So it makes it like, oh, it's still dope. The only time it's going to get a little stale is when you're tired of the artist. You know what I mean? Because once you get tired of the artist, that's when it really becomes a whole different generation. Like, you know, when you don't hear a certain artist anymore, they move on to another artist quick. The youth is different. So the youth is going to have a different projection of how music is being transcended now.
Especially with Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, the attention span, if you don't hold the crowd, they just find somebody else, clicking the fingers.
Yeah, because, you know, the attention span right now, think about it. When I first heard records, they were 15 to 17 minutes long, a song. 10, 15, 17 minutes, the whole song. Now you got songs that's 155, 2 minutes, 3 minutes the most. Anything after that, you can forget about it.
For me personally, I still have, for me, the perfect is anywhere between 3:30 and 5, depending on the track. I always find if it's a 2-minute track and I love it, it's always too short. I'm always asking for more. So it's always a balancing act.
Absolutely.
And so now you've got this new era where, in terms of radio, you're competing with music that people have with their phones. You know, they're literally carrying, they've got, you know, as we said, Spotify, SoundCloud, all these different avenues to access music. How do you feel as someone who's on the radio keeps fans coming back to you versus on Spotify, for example?
I mean, that's to each his own, their own preference. It's like, you know, someone used to carry an iPod, and their own iPod had their only selection of music that they had. I mean, you're going to listen to terrestrial radio. You're going to listen to internet radio. It doesn't matter. You're going to listen to everything as it goes. There's no denying in any part of how someone listens to music or the structure of music there is. You know, you can listen to Tidal, you can listen to SoundCloud, people still the number one place is YouTube. They're going to listen to that because they want to listen to that. But there's internet radio, IG Live plays music all day long. You know what I mean? So there's never not no room for, how do I say, regular radio, terrestrial radio. It's always there.
You've been in the game for a long time. What do you see as next? Do you have something that you still want to achieve? Are you happy where you're at the moment?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
All good. Is there anything else you want to achieve? Is there anything else, you know, moving forward into your career? You don't look like you're going to slow down anytime soon. Is there any new avenue you want to enter?
Right now, where I'm entering is consultment. I have a company. It's called He Rock LLC, and it's consultment to new artists, helping artists brand themselves, having an understanding of what, you know, the game really is, and how can you achieve to better heights than what's already been done.
Awesome. How long have you been doing that for?
Well, I've been doing that for years, but officially for the last 2 years has been what I've really been doing.
Well, if any artists are listening, hit up my man Chubby Chub. You know, someone who's been in the game for such a long period of time. Even just speaking to Chubby Chub, my mind is blown with all the references, the advice. So definitely worth hitting you up.
Thank you.
And for you right now, because coronavirus has changed everything. Like, how has coronavirus affected you? How's it affected your career? And obviously you can't tour at the moment, but what have you been doing during the lockdown and the pandemic?
I mean, honestly, it's been a great thing. I mean, I know it's not a great thing as far as the pandemic for what it's done for a lot of families and things like that, but for me, it hasn't stopped me. It just reinvented me. It just made me be more cautious and more aware to my family and more enduring into everything else that I want to be doing later on. You know, I got time to spend. I was able to spend more time with my mother, spend time with my family, enjoy life, and take it easy for a moment.
And so, where you are right now, where are you living at the moment?
I'm in Boston.
In Boston. How has the pandemic affected Boston?
Well, you know, it's just like anything. You can't go to clubs. It ain't gonna be no clubs no time soon. But you know, you got IG Live, you got Zoom, you got every social platform that you can do, and you still be able to be heard and seen.
And how is it in terms of restrictions? Are you allowed outside? Are you allowed to do
Yeah,
whatever you need?
you're allowed outside. You're definitely allowed outside. I'm cautious. I'd rather not be outside.
I'm jealous, to be honest. Down here in Melbourne, we've been in lockdown for 6 out of the last 7 months. So, like, we can't go more than 5Ks out of from where we live. We used to have curfew at 8 o'clock. So, man, we're itching to get outside. But hopefully, our cases are under 10 a day. So, hopefully, they let us out. But obviously, I know in the US, it's no one really knows what the deal is. And obviously you've got the upcoming election as well. That's going to throw a spanner in the works. So hopefully everything kind of calms down. And you've got, you know, the turbulence in terms of the social side of things, which is something that hip hop has been talking about from the very beginning. And we review hip hop albums on this podcast as well. And every single album talks about injustices towards African American and minority communities. And it is still crazy that these are conversations we still have to have. We always talk about that. It blows our mind that 30 years ago, the same thing is still happening right now. And hopefully, you know, now with the way the world works, we can see steps forward into, you know, equality and treating people the way everyone wants to be treated.
You know, everybody just has to be safe and positive and be patient because it's never going to happen overnight.
And I mean, you're a perfect example of relationship building. Like, you know, you've got all these connections to different artists. I mean, what's your foundation? What do you come back from when you interact with people? What's the thing that you try to always do?
Smile. Smile and laugh. That's probably my only end all be all is that. It's just staying positive. You know, I don't dwell on what's not happening. I dwell on what I need done.
Hey, and I think that's a perfect recipe. If we smiled more, if we laughed more, if we look past what makes us different and we look at what makes us the same, I think the world will be a better place. We're all very similar, regardless of where you come from.
Absolutely.
Do you have a tour for you that was a standout, where you look back at that tour and go, that was one of the best tours I've ever done?
I want to say, honestly, Australia was probably one of the biggest tours. Besides London, it was like the two biggest tours that we had.
Because there were big tours, obviously, flying down to Australia. Did you do shows back to back? What was the scheduling like?
Yeah, they were back to back. We was out for the whole 2 weeks in Australia, and then the last place we went to was New Zealand.
New Zealand as well, big hip hop culture. They got artists like Scribe down there as well.
Real hip hop. And big shouts to Rain.
Well, man, I always like to finish off with a question, and it is simply, if you had one album that you think everybody should listen to, regardless of, you know, what type of music you're into, what album would that be?
I'm gonna say Reasonable Doubt, Jay-Z.
Reasonable Doubt. It's a classic album. I personally am a huge fan of that album. To me, it's probably, in my opinion, the best thing Jay-Z has done. It's just full of classics. You got, producers like DJ Premier in there as well.
Ski, Clark Kent. You had great producers, and there's a great foundation.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So check it out. And if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. Obviously, Jay-Z is the superstar that everybody knows he is. And it's just cool to see where he came from. DJ Chubby Chub, thank you for coming on the show. I'll let you plug anything you want to plug.
I just want to say thank you for having me, man. Stay safe, everybody. And you want to follow me at DJ Chubby Chub, 2 B's, 1 B. Follow me and I'll follow you. Let's rock out.
And you can follow him on Instagram. He's got YouTube as well. Obviously, he's still doing radio gigs. If you want to check out some of his sets, they are on YouTube. So check out DJ Chubby Chub. And obviously, do some research. DJ Chubby Chub has been in the game for a very long time. And as we said in the show, if you want to get in touch with him, he's got his consulting company as well. So if you ever need guidance, if you ever need help moving your career forward,
yes,
hit him up. Stand-up guy. He's been nothing but good. So I appreciate you coming on the show and appreciate having the chance to speak to you, especially someone who's been in the game for such a long time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the show. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram at @the_Slim Fitty Biggie Committee. And stay tuned for our next podcast. Bye for now.